evening, campers, and welcome back to Lotus Operations. And in today's video, we are going to attempt to make a water distillery, a solar distillery, using a 5-gallon water container, some tubing, and some mirrors. Now, will this work? We don't know if this is going to work or not. I've seen videos of this being done, but to me, it looks a little bit too good to be true. So whether this works or not, I'm going to be posting this. And if the first variation does not work, I'm going to try to modify it to see if I can get it to work. Or is this type of survival skill a complete failure and something that you do not want to do in a survival situation to filter out water? So let's begin. Okay guys, and welcome back to Lotus Operations. And as I mentioned, we are going to be distilling water using a 5-gallon water jug and the sunlight. Now, I waited until the temperatures cooled down a little bit to about in the 80s instead of being in the hundreds, because of course the higher the temperatures, the faster it will distill the water. But we want to see in a survival situation, because you're not always going to be in 100-degree temperature. So we cooled it down a little bit until it got into the 80s and 70s to see about what a good average temperature and how much water you would get with those temperature ranges. So let's begin crafting our distillery and then let's try it out. So for our distillery, we're going to be using a whole bunch of different random scrap pieces of PVC pipe. We're going to be using a 5-gallon container, and we're also going to be utilizing some mirrors. Now I got some high good reflective mirrors here that I need to get that are made out of metal right here. And these mirrors is nothing but metal, and we're going to be using these to refract the sunlight. And here is a whole bunch of them that I have. So the first thing you want to do is you want to grab all your supplies. We have our 3 mirrors here that we're going to be doing. We've got our 5 gallons. We got our PVC. Now we want to fit our PVC pipes that we have to the lid of this, whether we use the original hole and expand her a little bit bigger by shoving large objects into her, or we are going to take off the cap and slip a big piece of pipe over the top. But that depends upon what we have, and this is about a 2-inch top, and I do not have any 2-inch PVCs here. I have only 3-inch and 1.5 inch, so we're gonna have to shove it inside her, stretch her out, and then start distilling water. So we're going to be grabbing some pipes. As for this video, I'm going to be doing PVC pipes and metal pipes blend. Temporary use, I would use metal because eventually it will rust unless you can find stainless steel. And we're going to be combining PVC and metal together. And we're going to create a spout that's going to come from this sitting at an angle. It's going to go up so the water can cool down and then drip into our container. So, as we're going to see, we have this pipe here. Let's see if there's anything here. So this fits in here nice and tight. So we're going to leave this as it is. And then we're going to expand this over the top of this. Depends upon how much water we want to cool down for the distance going down to drip into our container. Remember, the longer this is, the more it's going to cool down. But if you do too long, then it's going to drip all the way back down to your container and you defeat the purpose. So you're going to have to do trial and error and see what is the most effective so you can collect the most amount of water vapor while having the least amount going back into your container. So let's combine this and then we'll go from there. Okay, so let's slow this down. So as you can see, I got a 90-degree, I've got a pipe, and then I've got the this will screw into, actually slip into here. This will stick into the specimen over here, which will shove this down into here. And then this will literally be just like this, resting up, dripping our water out of here, going up the pipe and down to here. Now, as you can see, I made sure everything was snug, nice and tight, and I used zero glue because in a survival situation, even though the glues is safe because we use them in our everyday housing and stuff like that, you may not come across it all the time. So you want to find stuff that's nice and tight, that will slip together, that will hold, that will work for what you need to do. For one, for easy breakdown in case you need to pack it up into a small container. And for two, in case you do not have the glue, so you can be able to adapt and learn and figure out your situation around you, basically using what resources you have. So let's fill this puppy up with water and let's try this out. Hey guys, so as you can see, the creek I was trying to go to is all dried up. So since my creek is all dried up, unfortunately, I am going to have to make my own creek water to do for this video. So let's head back home and make our own creek water. Okay, so here we are back at the house, and since we were not able to get our creek water, we're going to be using a little bit of dirt plus normal water to make our homemade creek water so that we can prove to see how well the sun distills the water. So let's begin. Okay, as you can see, we're here. We have our seal. I'm not breaking the seal so we can have a best case scenario of a complete seal, so there's no evaporation coming out the bottom. But worst case scenario, if you're not able to do this, then you can try to seal it the best you can. But let's create our creek water. We're gonna put some dirt in here because that's what basically dirty water is. It's a little bit of dirt mixed in with water, so you get that bacteria in there, that amazing bacteria. In here. Now we're gonna add our water. So let's add our water. And we're going to, now normally I would be filling this up about halfway, but for the video purposes, we are going to fill it up still about maybe halfway to get simulated out a good amount of creek water. Because we don't want to fill it up all the way full, because we want to leave some room to build up heat inside. Now, in a real survival situation, you maybe would fill it up a little bit more or have a continuous source going in there. As it empties, you would keep adding more at that point. Okay, so we're gonna put that much in there. Now, as you can see, this would be equal to about the creek water you would get on the dirtiness. We cannot drink this straight up like this. This has to settle for 3 days, and this has to be sterilized. But we're going to distill it so we can start it immediately. And as you can see, the condensation up here, well, this is actually from the water being sprayed in there, but in reality, when this heats up, it's going to condensate like this, but we want to condensate it in the tubes and drip into the next container. So let's get going. Okay, so now, before you can support your jug of water, you need to either build yourself a brace by putting 2 sticks sideways like this, tying it together so they cannot fall, so you can be able to support the jug up. Find a stick with the Y in it. Find a string tied between 2 objects, nailed into the ground. However you can get your jar braced up, get it braced up. But right now we are going to be taking and creating our own brace by tying strings around 2 sticks so we can make it as Fallout style as possible. So we're going to basically have 2 sticks like this. We're going to tie it around here, creating a brace point. And then you're just going to create it nice and firm so it can be able to take and hold the jug up. It doesn't have to hold a lot of weight because you know your jug is not full. You just need to be able to support the weight of your jug. As you can see, that's literally it. It's going to go like this, and it's going to support the jug. So let's go. Okay, and so then the biggest thing you want to do is you want to be able to have the sunlight coming in on the jug, being reflected around as much as possible for the mirrors and the stuff like that. So you want to find the perfect angle to be able to grab as much sunlight as possible. And then literally it's just going to go over like this, support in like this. Then, but you want to make sure that this is into the ground and this is supported like this. Then you're going to have your mirrors, your highly reflective mirrors right here, is you're going to be placed around the jug, and you're going to support them up so you can be able to take and get as much sunlight on this as possible. So you want to be able to have these broken down if you have to get them smaller, and you're just going to support this up, whether it's 1 stick, 2 stick, 3 sticks, but there's really not much weight for these having to be done. So we're going to create a point like this of reflecting as much sunlight onto this as possible. So you want the reflection to hit your jar. So then you're just going to be creating supports for these behind here to be able to hold this, be reflecting. And then you may have to adjust throughout the day. You may not. It all depends upon how things are. Now, as you learn this and you adapt throughout the time frame of you trying to survive, you will learn how to make this more effective, better, stronger. You can build yourself a contraption to hold the mirrors so you don't have to worry about bracing them up. But we're going worst case scenario where if you had to brace everything and refract as much sunlight into it as possible. So you want the reflections to try to hit the jar, and then you adjust the reflections throughout the day onto the jar to keep as much heat building into the jar as possible. Then you're going to insert the tube down into her so this can collect the moisture and the evaporation inside there. And then if you can seal this up, if this doesn't have a good seal, you can seal this up to help prevent some of the evaporation coming out. But now we're going to allow this to sit in the sunlight. It is currently 14:31, if you can see it. And we are going to come back in an hour and see how much condensation we're going to have in our container that we're going to be putting over here. And we're going to be blocking the sunlight from it so this container over here does not heat up as much as possible. And then the condensation should build in here, drip down into here, and be good. Now here is the final setup. As you can see, we've got our mirrors refracting as much sunlight as possible that you can easily adjust as the sun shifts in the sky and goes over to create condensation. We've got our dirty creek water, homemade. We've got our pipe coming out that will collect the condensation, cool it down, and drip it into the container, which is protected from the sun to help prevent as much evaporation as possible. Now, the reason why I am not trapping this inside here to create a seal, because once it reaches the maximum humidity or dew point of the system, it will stop evaporation. So you have to have it continuously dripping out. You cannot collect water inside these pipes, inside of another container without air flowing. Unfortunately, you have to take a slight water loss, but if you've got a creek next to you, you're not really worried about that because you'll continuously keep evaporating. But that's why you keep the sunlight off of this container so it can stay as cool as possible and not evaporate as fast as this over here. Okay, campers, we are about an hour into this. We're just slightly shy, but we're going to get a check on the sea. Now, as you can see, condensation is starting to build up across the entire thing. And as you can see, the water is settling, becoming more clear with the dirt settling to the bottom, but that's not what we're looking for. We are looking for this over here to see if there is any water starting to drip. And at the moment, there is none. So we're going to let it sit and see how long it takes before the water starts dripping, and then go from there. Worst case scenario, this is too high and too long, and we're going to need to shorten it down. This is what we're going to see, and that's the whole point of this, is trial and error. Okay, so it's currently 16:03, an hour and a half later, and we have got a lot of condensation, and our mirrors are still working. We got to readjust them again for the sunlight since it's shifting, but let's see, there's still no water, and it is not wet in here, so I'm thinking this is too high, and the water is draining back into here. So I'm going to readjust this to make this flatter, and then we're going to try again on this. So we readjusted the mirrors once again. We now have this at a flatter angle going down into here. So now let's see if this will allow us to have any evaporation in here or not. Or maybe this may take several days to get done, but so far it's been an hour and a half and there's been zero evaporation. So this is not a method that I would prefer, unless this is the problem and the hole is too small and we need to make a bigger one to condensate down to a smaller container. But we can do that on day 2. Okay guys, we still got sunlight here and we are 2 hours into this, and as you can see, we got a lot of condensation here. I have a feeling that if this is not working right now after 2 hours, not even a drop of water, we are either A, releasing moisture through here and we don't have a good seal here, or all the condensation is going here and flowing back into the water, in which I did not want, and this thing needs to be more vertical, like horizontal. but that defeats the purpose of this. So we may have to make this a different way if this does not end up working. So let's see here. We have this water here, and let's see if there is anything coming out or not. And as you can see, there is nothing in here at all. Let's see if there's even anything in the tube at all. So we're going to disconnect this tube, and we're going to see if this thing is even getting condensation in here. Okay, this tube is still bone dry on the inside. So, being that this tube is bone dry on the inside, there is no condensation going into this tube at all. So let's try something else. So what we're going to try is we're going to try to shove a smaller tube in here since this has a bigger hole, and seeing if this will give us better condensation, better results. Maybe that was too small of a tube, which restricted the water moisture from going in. So I'm going to hook it up and we're going to see. Relax, Bessie. Yeah, there we go. So now, as you can see, we have this puppy now shoved into here. This is a lot tighter. It was a really tight fit. So we're going to reset this up and see if this makes any of a difference of a bigger hole. Okay, so as you can see, we have the new attachments. We have this attachment going here into there, condensating up to there. We've got our mirrors repositioned to focus as much sunlight onto our device as possible. So let's see if this new adjustment makes any difference, or if we're going to have to go straight back to the drawing board and that this is a bust. So we will come back later this afternoon. Current time is 16:40, and we will see from here if this is going to be worth it or not. Good evening, campers, and it is 21:35, approximately 8 hours after I started this project. So we're going to see if there's any water in here from the nighttime and the daytime use. As you can see from the moonlight, there's still condensation in our jug here, as you can see from the moonlight. But let's see if any water accumulated while I was gone doing trailer repairs in the thing or not. So as you can see, we have this jar here. We're gonna move it here, pick up our thing, move out our jar, and we're gonna see if there's any water accumulated inside or not. And honestly, I don't think any water accumulated inside this at all. Let's see if the tubes are wet. The inside of the tubes, no. Inside tubes are completely dry. So I don't think that this design actually works, or this ideal of creating a jar into a solar still is actually a working method at all. Okay guys, so this jar has been sitting here for a while now. I'm going to leave it one more day, and we are going to try again for a full day of sunlight, of sitting out there in the heat all day. Unfortunately, I have to work most of the day, so I'll adjust the mirrors once I get home. And we're going to see if we can get it to drain and drip dry into our other container, or if this is a total bust and this is fake. So far, the best ways of collecting water from the environment around you will be a solar still from the ground, where the water evaporates from the ground into a container, and or boiling it. Now, this method will work really well if you're boiling the water, because you're forcing steam into the container, which will pressurize and condensate down. But we're trying to do it without a fire. So we're going to give it one more day, one more try to see if this actually works or not. Okay, campers, welcome back to Lotus Operations. And it's been over 24 hours since this process has started. The wind blew this down while I was going to work. And then, unfortunately, there is zero liquid in here at all in this jar. Nothing at all. So this process is not working. So we're going to reset this back up. We're going to be using 8 mirrors instead of 3, and we're going to funnel them around it like a satellite dish. So we're going to raise the jar up, funnel the mirrors around it, and hopefully get some results from that method. And if not, then this is a lie and a bust for a survival purposes. Even though we see the condensation inside the jar taking place, I'm thinking that it is not escaping out of the tube and going down And our third option we could try is to open up that full lid and try that option instead. So we're going to create a platform for this to sit on. And then we're going to start putting the mirrors around it. Okay guys, so I have this built again for round 2, and if this ideal does not work and it does not allow the water evaporation to come out into the jar or even create any form of humidity down these pipes and stuff like that, we know that this ideal is not an effective solution in a survival situation, no matter who says what. Because if this is an option that has to take days and weeks just to even harvest your water, it's not worth it. You need something that will take place within 8-hour time frame to gather water. And the solar stills that you dig and build in the ground and just use the natural heat evaporation produces a half a cup a day. And this thing has still yet to produce a single drop. Okay guys, and it's currently 5:33. So basically we have no more sunlight on the tube, so therefore it's not going to be producing any more heat. So if this does not have any moisture at all in this tube, even though it may be draining back, if there's no moisture in this tube or even down in here, we know that this method is not an effective or a fake way of basically doing survival purposes, unless because of this valve going in, restricting access, that the water instead is just falling back down into the container and just recycling and stuff like that. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to give up. I'm going to come up with other ways, but I know that boiling the water would force the steam from here because it'd be pressurized and it would definitely come out here and condensate down, but we're trying to do it without fire in case you cannot build fire. So let's see if there's any moisture at all. So we are going to open this up. First, we're going to open this one up here. Like, here we go. Pop this open. Wait, you know what? Let's not drop this glass here. So first, is there any moisture in here? Okay. Doesn't feel like it. No, just dry dust, no moisture, and no moisture. And as you can see in here, there's no water vapor, no water droplets trying to come out, and there's not even condensation on the inside of the tubes. So now we know that this method is not an effective way of filtering water for survival purposes. Okay guys, so we tried to make a solar still just using the sunlight and a 5-gallon water container with mirrors, and it failed. So we are not going to give up on it, but we know that this method is something that you cannot do in a survival situation. And this is why you need to, right now, start learning different methods of filtering water, making fire, doing what you need to do, because when the times collapse and things actually do happen, in which they will a lot sooner, I feel, than later, you don't want to be at that time frame moment trying to figure this out and filtering water when you don't have a fire to boil water, when you don't have a way of drinking water through a survival straw, when you don't have clean water. You don't want to be at that time frame trying to figure out how to get clean water, because, like, for instance, this method failed. Therefore, you would literally dehydrate and die of thirst if you're trying to use this method. So this is a good example of why you should be practicing now, finding methods that actually works and that is effective. So when things actually do collapse, you will be prepared instead of dying. So hope you enjoyed the video and Lotus Operations out, and sorry that I could not make it work. But this does not mean that it is over. I'm going to find a way.